Welcome to the RP Show.
With me, the Tubiac Maniac.
And me, Steve Johnson. Season 2, episode number 9.
Hey, we're back for another episode. So, Steve, what do we got?
Oh, Mike, this is a big one. This is a big one. It's a long one, but it's a big one. It's a little bit different this week. This person does not have RP and is not related to the RP community.
So, where does he tie in here?
So this ties in nicely because the last few episodes we've been talking about local heroes, haven't we? And
yes,
overcoming RP. So I've got a guest for you, Mike, that you're really going to like. This guy, he is somebody who literally personifies determination and motivation. Just to give you his credentials, he has cystic fibrosis, which is a fairly aggressive illness. He set up and runs an international or global charity for children with cystic fibrosis. He's been given an OBE from the Queen of England. He's a insane endurance athlete and world record holder. And he has a couple of businesses that he does on the side, one of which is an apparel company and also a mindset and coaching company. So without further ado, let's hear from Josh Llewellyn-Jones. Hey, Josh, welcome to the RP Show.
Thanks for having me,
Josh,
guys.
what's up?
I'm very toasty.
Excellent.
Very toasty.
Excellent. Okay, Josh, so let's kick things off by, first of all, you're our first guest, which is not related to the RP community or low vision community. Obviously, in this episode, we're going to dive into loads of stuff around mindset, motivation, all that good stuff. But before we get into that, can you just give a big introduction? Just tell everybody who you are, what your credentials are. So, before we get into the whole motivation and mindset.
I'll make it as big as I possibly can. So, Josh Llewellyn-Jones, I'm an endurance athlete. I live in Cardiff in Wales, and I have cystic fibrosis, which is a lung disease. As you know, Steve, your lovely wife has the same thing as me, so that's what we have in common. And I was given 10% chance of surviving my first night when I was born, and then told I wouldn't reach 30. So I've got a world record. I've got a couple of world records. The best one in my eyes is lifting 1 million kilos in 24 hours. I then went on to set up my children's charity, CF Warriors, and raised a lot of money for lots of different cystic fibrosis charities throughout my life, and was very lucky and literally honoured by the Queen by giving an OBE. So essentially, I'm an officer of the British Empire. It doesn't really give me the key to the city or anything like that just yet, but yes, and I've got my apparel business, 24, which we sell socks and hats and things like that. And I'm a mindset coach. So work with people on positive routines, getting people in the right mindset, how to overcome obstacles in their life and ultimately live their best life, essentially, and reach all their goals.
Brilliant.
Awesome.
Okay, so
Awesome.
First bit then, before we get into that then. So 1 million kilos, what's that in American pounds?
It's
I was gonna say.
2.2 million pounds.
I actually knew that was a test. Well done.
You see how quick my maths is?
It was brilliant. 2.2 million pounds. So Mike, when you're ready, if you could crack on and try and hit 2.2 million pounds in 24 hours.
All right, let's do it.
That'd be awesome. And just point out some of your accolades, Josh, some of the fundraising that you did for CF. Like, I know you've done some pretty good challenges, endurance related, for various CF charities. Want to mention a few?
Yeah, so the first ultra endurance event I did, which was the first 24-hour event I did, was the World's Fittest Man Challenge. And within that 24 hours, I had to lift 100 tons, cycle 100 miles, run 10 mile, row 10 mile, cross train 10 mile, swim 2 miles, and then do 3,000 sit-ups, 1,000 press-ups, and 1,000 squats. And I was only allowed 3 2-minute breaks within that 24-hour period. So that was pretty intense. And then the following year I did the 1 million kilos, and then the year after that I did my first ever triathlon, which was a 21 mile swim, a 200 mile bike, and a 160 mile run in 5 days with no rest. So that was pretty
Ugh.
gruesome.
Man, crazy.
Yeah, it was interesting. My first and last triathlon, actually. I haven't done one since.
Okay, Josh. So great credentials. You definitely know about motivation and determination. That is for sure. And I have witnessed that with my own eyes, pun intended. And what we want to come to now, the reason why I wanted to get you on the show is we've been showcasing loads of local heroes within the RP community. Now, because you know me and we've met previously, you know quite a bit about RP, which is great. And what we want to dive into is motivation and determination, because for our viewers that watch this with RP, we've got quite a spectrum. We've got people that are the OGs. They've been blind for years. They've got it down. They're coping fine. But we also get loads of messages of people that have just found out they're going blind. And me and Mike know they're going to need loads of motivation, loads of determination just to get through life, not to lift 1 million kilos, but just to get a job, get a wife, get a husband, do well at school, college. They're going to need determination and motivation just to get through, the mundane day-to-day life. So Mike and I wanted to bring you on, talk about mindset, talk about determination, and anything you can think of that will be helpful for these people. That's what we want to discuss. So over to you. Where to begin when building your mindset?
Understanding what you want out of your life for any condition you've got. What do you want your life, and excuse the pun, what do you want your life to look like in the future? What do you want your life to look like in the future? What do you want it to feel like? Who do you want around you? And I think with anything like this, where it's progressive, right? It's important to have the right people around you who are going to support you on this journey. And it's important to obviously understand that you're not alone. So I think it's important to have people around you and the right people around you. Everyone is individual. There's not one person that deals with things in exactly the same way as someone else. And I think it's really important for people to understand that they're on their own individual story. It's great that they can look to you guys, and I love the way you inject humor into it, because actually that's your coping mechanism. Psychologically, that's how you've dealt with things. It might not be how everyone else deals with it. I think most of the time, though, what we fail to recognize as human beings is that we constantly need goals with our lives. Small goals, in terms of, okay, well, what do I want to do next week? What do I want to achieve in the next 24 hours to get me closer to my bigger goal for this year? If that is like you go skiing, Steve, so one of your goals might be to go to a certain place to go skiing or go rock climbing or go and do a DIY project. It can be absolutely anything. But what are you doing today to get you a little bit closer? Because I think if you can start to focus your efforts on the positive stuff, and I know that can be really, really hard for a lot of people, but especially when it's fairly new and you're just learning about RP and the impact that can have on your life. But if you can focus on the positive stuff and still what you want to achieve, and if they're struggling to think about, okay, well, can I achieve anything with this thing because I don't know much about it and it's really debilitating. Well, just look at you guys, and you have to look for inspiration. When I was growing up, unfortunately in the CF community, there wasn't that many sort of older people with CF, because it was, you die quite young when I was born. So I didn't really have role models. And the key for me was actually to not look at myself as having anything wrong with me. It was actually to look at myself and go, well, I'm still in control of what I can achieve with my life. So regardless of if someone's going to turn around with an opinion that, oh, that's impossible because you've got CF, it's the same with you guys. There's always going to be people who say it's impossible because you've got RP, or your sight isn't as good, so you can't go and do that. Little do they know that Steve's on Facebook going skiing, 10 feet away from a cliff edge, and he's having the time of his life. Important thing though is, and listen, we've all been there. I've been there as well. When someone says, you can't do that, and then you say, right, okay, I'm going to set out on this journey to prove you wrong. That's really powerful on day one. It's also quite powerful on week one, right? But if the goal isn't actually that important to you and you're only doing it to prove one person wrong, are you going to stay on track? So when it comes around to like month 3 and your motivation is slightly decreased and you're not training as hard or you're not focused as hard on that goal, I'd argue that it's probably not the right goal for you.
So you're saying, first thing is focus on what you want to achieve with your life. So that's kind of the big goal. Then you said, break it down into small goals. Doesn't have to be massive. What do you want to achieve this week? What do you want to achieve next week?
So when you set out your goals, it has to be something, and I always say this to my clients, what would you attempt if you knew you could not fail?
Wow. What would you attempt if you knew you could not fail?
Because that should be your list of goals.
Wow, that's powerful.
If there's anything on that list which doesn't scare you, then it shouldn't be on your list.
What about determination? Just that pure grit, dogged determination, because that's where you've kind of become famous, because you've had insane levels of determination. I think I'm quite a determined person, and Mike is as well, but you go through phases, don't you, where you lose your determination and your motivation. And I'm sure you've experienced that. So let's talk about that determination. How can you get determination? How can you create determination? Any tips?
The thing that keeps me on track, and this is key for me personally, and I know with the clients that I deal with from a mindset coaching point of view, it's key for them all the time, is your morning routine.
Oh, really?
Because
okay, that's interesting.
We've all been into a stage where you've woken up one morning, you just feel a bit groggy, you haven't had a great sleep. You've got probably a bad nighttime routine of staying up gaming or staying up watching TV or just staying up late, and then you wake up with no energy, or your diet is rubbish, so you wake up with no energy. But your morning routine, I mean, I do a cold shower every morning without fail. And then after that, I do gratitude. And gratitude is a tough one to get to start off with. Especially
How so?
So let's take it back to, you're talking about maybe a young person who's just been diagnosed with RP and they don't really know what direction to go in. It's probably not at that stage just yet.
It's probably not feeling particularly grateful having just found it. Right,
exactly. But let's flip it on its head. So you guys are quite literally living your best life. You're happy. You're doing the things that you love with the people that you love. And I would argue that actually, because you've got RP, you've probably pushed boundaries more than some of your friends.
Push boundaries? Who, me?
It's fascinating.
What were we doing?
Absolutely fascinating. I'm laughing now, and I was laughing at the time because me and Steve, I think, have the same kind of humor, which is why we got on so well when we first met. And obviously, as I've mentioned before, Steve's wife's got CF, same as me. And we put on this event. It was a new event. We'd never done it before, called the Warrior Games, to raise money for CF Warriors, my charity. So teams of 4 go head to head for 24 hours in kind of circuits, weightlifting, running, and all this stuff. And like I said, so teams of 4, they come with their support team down to Cardiff and they compete, and it's pretty gruesome stuff. It's, we're pushing people beyond what they ever fathomed they'd ever be doing. It's pretty intense.
No sleep, just 24 hours round the clock all night. Hardcore event. Can't stress that enough.
And it's high intensity, high heart rate when you are training, because it's 20 minutes of real intense work. So as I'm going around the teams and I'm interviewing them for social media and we're having a bit of a chat and everything else, I interviewed Steve, 2 or 3 times throughout the 24 hours. And Steve's team ended up winning by a country mile, the first Warrior Games. And we had a dinner the night. Bear in mind, they'd been training for 24 hours. They went back to their hotel for a few hours sleep and rest and recovery. And then that night we were in a big place having a dinner, and we had a bit of an award ceremony. And I was on stage and I kind of said, and the winners of the, I think 2019, maybe 2019 Warrior,
I think it was
2017 even. Right. Okay. So 2017 Warrior Games with a WOD squad, and it was Steve's team. And it was quite strange. So all the lights were on the stage, as you can imagine. I'm looking out, and I say to Kyle, who's like my mate, who's also like a guest of honor, like, what's that guy doing? and Steve's coming up with his team to the
Uh-oh.
stage, and it's the first time I've seen him with a cane, right? So he's walking up with a cane. Now, me being me and having chatted to Steve a few times and got his humor, really good humor, I thought he's taking the mick out of the other teams because they've won by so much.
Oh,
So he's
no.
not blind. He's just taking the mick out
Okay.
of all these teams.
You
So
thought it
I'm
was a Josh,
laughing.
Mike. You thought I was playing a prank on the other athlete.
God,
Yeah,
that's
I thought he was playing a prank. So I've forgotten about this. I've got my mic, right, in front of 350 people. He comes up with a cane, and I'm laughing. I'm genuinely laughing because I think it's a joke, right? So I gave him the trophy and everything else, and then quickly realized that, oh my God, he's blind. That's genuine. I was like, oh my God, I'm laughing. What the hell? What a horrible person I must be. And that was the
Oh my
first
God.
moment. I'd interviewed him 2 or 3 times. I was like, wow, how the hell has this guy managed to hide this from me? I must be the one who's blind, not him. I've not seen this at all. And
That's
anyway,
too funny.
so I think because it was like I was hosting the event and I was all over the place, I didn't really get a chance to properly speak to Steve, face to face at that night.
Right.
And then you sent me a lovely video, Steve, on Facebook, actually. I remember it, almost word for word, about how sorry you were that you'd pulled the wool over my eyes. Quite, excuse the pun. There's so many here. And I watched this video and I was tearing up because, what Steve said was that he wasn't normally allowed to any events, especially lifting weight over his head because of his impairment. And this event was so important to him because his wife's got CF. I'm getting goosebumps now thinking about it because it was such a poignant moment for me in my life of this guy who just, like, against all odds came through and not only won the event with his team, but absolutely smashed it. And for me to sit there and think that, certain events would say no to someone with that much drive and determination and ability was just beyond me. And I thought, how unfair is this? And I think I messaged you back, Steve, and just said, wow, you're always welcome at our event. We're always going to make it okay for you to be there. And then I started thinking back to some of the points throughout the 24 hours of how didn't I notice? So during the warm-up, for example, Kyle, one of the head trainers, was getting them to warm up and run around cones. And Steve's team was like telling him where the cones were, and he'd knocked the cone a couple of times. And when I look back, I'm like, wow. But if you want an example of true teamwork, that is it, because his mates were absolutely phenomenal, not just in helping him, but hiding it from me as well.
I do remember the
mean,
story. I remember on my podcast, Steve told me the story of this event. So it's like I'm recalling it all. It's pretty cool. But I didn't know
so this is the guy.
Obviously, other half of the story.
Yeah, this is the guy that hosts the event, and like I say, the like Josh has mentioned, the reason for that is for insurance purposes, and because it was a 24-hour event, we'd all had to sign disclaimers and stuff anyway, because it's it's not like doing a normal event. It's a 24-hour event. It's in the the MOD facility, and
our disclaimers are pretty good. Like, if you die, it's not our fault.
It's on you. I've signed many of those waivers. Oh yeah.
Honestly, Mike, I was so paranoid about just not being allowed to do it because it's dangerous and you're lifting weights. And we had a discussion as a team, and we said, right, we'll just hide it. We won't tell anyone. We'll pretend I'm.
I remember you told me this. I remember this whole story. Yeah, I remember you said you were like, yeah, I'm not. I just won't. We won't. We'll just kind of just be under the radar, and
and you'll appreciate this, Mike. You can imagine my 3 guides, as good as they are, after 18 hours of constant exercise, sleep deprivation, the quality of the guiding did start to diminish throughout the night.
Really? What do you mean?
Yeah, and just for the guys watching, obviously the event was one thing, but at the night time, I didn't need to hide it anymore because the event was over. It didn't matter for insurance purposes. I wasn't going to injure anybody at a meal. But then the other thing was, you turned all the lights off for the awards. And Mike's laughing because that's me fully outed. That was it now. There's no hiding it.
Oh, you're caught now.
Yeah. Okay, Josh, then, before we start to wrap things up, just the last thing I want to talk about is the CF Warriors and the 24. So the 24, that's all about mindset, isn't it? So this is your brand. Do you want to just tell us about that, what the brand is, what it stands
Yeah.
for, where people can find the merch?
Yeah, so I started the clothing brand. I've always wanted to start my own clothing brand, and I had many, many different ideas. And I kind of thought, well, hang on, I'm all about mindset. How can I help people through clothing to get into a positive mindset and just basically to focus on what's ahead of them and not dwell too much on the bigger tasks? And I came up with the brand 24. I'm known for doing 24-hour challenges. All my social channels are Josh LJ24. So it made sense to call the brand 24. And it is more than just a brand or a logo on a pair of socks or a hat. It's about just focusing whatever you're going through in life, whether it's good, whether it's bad, whatever obstacles you've got, just focus on being the best version of yourself you can be for the next 24 hours. Just focus on getting through the next 24 hours and break it down like that. And it just puts you in a better space, really, rather than thinking, where am I going to be in 5 years' time? It's, especially with RP, it's perfect, because if you can just focus on getting through the next 24 hours, the journey becomes that much easier and you're going to be that much more successful than going, oh my God, where am I going to be in 5 years' time?
Yeah.
It's impossible to think that way with RP, or even with your condition. It's just 24 hours is way more easy to handle.
Okay, cool. Right, next one. We've got to talk quickly just about the CF Warriors. This is fantastic, isn't it? So just explain to our viewers, in case there is anybody watching this that knows somebody with cystic fibrosis, especially children or anything like that, just tell them what the CF Warriors is, what you do, that sort of stuff.
So I started the charity CF Warriors some years ago to try and motivate kids and families to get into sport and exercise, because that's what's helped me live the life I've got and be as fit as I can, as fit as I am at the age of 34. I was 30 at the time. I had this idea of, right, I'm going to set up this charity. No one else in the world is doing this. They're not pushing sport and exercise enough in my mind. So it started from there. And then as the funding has come through and as we've raised lots of money, we're now funding research down in Portsmouth University in England, where we're looking into the benefits of exercise, nutrition, what life is like now with the new drugs and how we cope with that, how we make sure that we're still doing the right things with exercise to stay fit and healthy. And I wanted to create a community of families that is essentially like a support network. So yeah, we've become the only global charity within the cystic fibrosis world, which is amazing. So we help kids with warrior packs. We send out clothing so they feel part of a team, because it's quite an isolating disease. So we sent out, I think, nearly 300 warrior packs last year during COVID. Wow. So we were still functioning through COVID. We didn't want to go into any kind of lockdown. We wanted to help these kids even more because they were even more isolated. And we send them to Australia, America, Canada, all across Europe. So we literally hit all four corners of the world. Hopefully they'll lift 1 million kilos one day, because I don't want the world record anymore.
Brilliant. Well, we'll put all the links in the description below for the CF Warriors charity. We'll put all the Insta links in there. So if anyone out there is watching and you've got children or families with cystic fibrosis, please head over to that. It's brilliant. I've done loads of fundraising for Josh and the charity and continue to do so. So it's really, really good to see that. I like it when you put the pictures on of the kids with the warrior packs and the hoodies and stuff. It's absolutely brilliant. We'll also put the links on to the 24 stuff, so we'll have all that on. Anything else you wanted to share, Josh, before we wrap up?
Not really, guys. Just to say thanks for having me on. It's been an absolute pleasure, and you guys are just as inspirational as me. And I think seeing your social medias and stuff and what you guys get up to is proper inspirational. And just take my hat off to you.
Brilliant.
Thank you.
Well, Josh, thank you very much. I know you're a very, very busy man. Josh Llewellyn-Jones, OBE and all that, international superstar.
My liege.
My liege.
Serious sock seller.
No, really, really appreciate you coming on the show, Matt. Thank you very much. Mike, anything to add?
No, he's been awesome. It's actually just nice to finally have I've heard of the CF Warriors from hearing from Steve and stuff like that. So it's just cool actually getting the actual person behind it all. So thank you.
Well, thanks for having me, guys. Really appreciate it.
So over to you guys. We challenge you to choose your mindset, set yourself some big objectives of what you really want, and then try and do one thing every day that moves you towards achieving your goals. Come and hang out with us on Facebook and Instagram. We'd love to hear how you're getting on with your goals. And as always, don't forget to follow us at The RP Show.